Samson Cherargei is the Senator for Nandi County. He's joining us now in the studio. Good morning, Senator.
Morning, Eric.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Welcome to the hot seat. We've been looking for you.
I know.
Finally, wewe hapa. Ndio wewe huyu hapa.
Nimepatikana leo.
Very good.
Yes.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you, sir.
Now, you have been leading a conversation that is with regards to maize, advocating for maize farmers, and saying maize farmers have done their bit, which is they've gone to the farms, they've produced a crop, they have harvested, and they're about to harvest. And then the government is looking at the available stock in the market. And the government says, with the shortage that we have, we want to fill the shortage that we have. And the government has proposed its own way of doing things. And you're up against that proposal by the government, which is to open the importation of duty-free maize into the country. Nimesummarize mambo yote vile tulivyo so far.
Those are around 6 questions. It's
no question yet. Just looking back at where the issues as they have been so far, right?
Yes.
So, question number 1.
Yes.
Why are you so vehemently opposed to the importation of maize into the country?
Thank you very much, Eric, and it's good to be at the Situation Room. Interestingly, you guys have been following you since the inception of the program, and I love the incisive engagement you normally have. And I had to read overnight to be able to appear in this show. The reason I'm not against the government decision to import. You remember the Gazette notice that was issued by CS Ukuri Yatani expired in September.
Yes.
The only problem that we had as members of parliament from maize growing areas is the timing. When you go to Nandi and North Rift and any other, including Trans Nzoia and Western Kenya, this is the season we are harvesting maize. So, and we are projected to maybe, God willing, to harvest around 42 million bags. The demand that the country needs is roughly 50 million bags. So what we were requesting and the government is to give us time up to February, March, buy all our maize mop-up, take it to the National Cereals and Produce Board. Then from there, they can now tell us the shortfall. So because how will you know the shortfall? The next issue is, you remember, Eric, that and my colleagues here, the cost of farming this year was more of what other people would do. We were being patriotic. We were buying 1 bag of fertilizer at 7,000 shillings. The cost of diesel was high. The cost of plowing was high. The cost of weeding was high. If you do an average cost of producing 1 bag of maize, it is 4,000 Kenyan shillings. We are now selling at 5,400 shillings. It will only allow us to recoup our expenses. So if you give duty-free maize, it means if I go to Zambia or wherever I get those maize, be it GMO or not, if I buy at 1,000 shillings, it is duty-free. When I come through Malapa border, I don't pay taxes. What does that mean? It will mean the millers will say, hallelujah, give us this maize. It's cheaper. It's 1,000 shillings. If we sell that less than 3,500 shillings per bag, we are making a loss. What does that translate? We will not have the energy to go to farming in the next planting season. We would have left our farmers to the vagaries of demand and supply in the market, and therefore, anywhere, Eric, whenever you travel across the Atlantic Ocean, be it, and it looks like my brother has traveled a lot, is whenever you travel to Europe or America, if you carry one seed, you'll be arrested and prosecuted. It is because of protectionism mechanisms that we have in place. And Kenya Kwanza, when we came into power, we promised what we call guarantee minimum returns to our farmers. So we are not against the importation of the shortfall, but the timing is wrong. The arrogance of the ministers things to high heavens, because you cannot just wake up one day and tell Kenyans, in Kenya, you are a candidate of death. If you had GMO, there is no problem on that list. As a leader, those are statements that is not even palatable in any civilized society. And therefore, the CS courier should be called out. And we have expressed dissatisfaction, and the president is aware of this position. So what I'm arguing is simple. We are not against the people. Let me tell you, Eric, The people that elected me, 99.9% are farmers. If I don't speak for them, and by the way, we are afraid. Maize farming will be killed the way sugarcane was killed. You know how sugarcane was killed? They started importing sugar from Brazil, repackaged at Mumia sugar, brought it at supermarket. And you know, Nandi is part of the sugar belt. I can tell you the worst in dignifying farming in the country is sugarcane. Coffee is on its knees. Tea is on ICU because of the fight of cartels, the passage of Tea Act that we did in 2020. So those are challenges that are facing farming. So if we allow maize to die, and food, the ugali and maize is the staple food in this country, it means in future, for example, let's assume that this country will depend on imports. Let's say we are depending on Ukraine to get our food. When Ukraine and Russia fight, where do we get our food? So I think in as much as there are 4 million Kenyans who are suffering, plus of we empathize and sympathize with them, but it is not the mistake of the farmers.
Indeed.
It is the mistake of the planners within the government.
All right. Now, Senator, even as we look at, one would hope that with all of this, that all of the things that we are seeing as a result, or rather are a result of planning, one would hope, right? The importation of maize, asking that prices drop on things like fertilizer, bringing in cheaper fertilizer. One would hope that that is as a result of planning. And I repeat, one would hope. Now, you say that the ask is to the government, give us until February, and then we can now take our maize to the National Cereals and Produce Board, and then from there we can move. Why February?
Because this is the season we're harvesting between October, November, December, March. And you know, when we harvest, because it's raining at the moment, we need to do the drying so that we avoid aflatoxins in the maize.
So currently there is no harvesting that is going on.
It is ongoing, but we need to trash it, take it to the dry, because so that we don't, you know, when you harvest when it is moist and you keep it might lead to aflatoxins in maize.
Okay.
So the reason we are requesting is the window period to be able to harvest,
make it
process,
ready for
drying it, because you know you'll take it to cereal. It is the moist will be checked, and then we can now take it to the cereals. One interesting and shocking to the nation, because I saw the leader of majority in the National Assembly, Kimani Ichung'wah, saying we are holding maize or we are hiding. One thing is not telling the nation is National Cereals and Produce Board is not open. National Grain Strategic Reserve is closed. National Grain Reserve does not even have rats in their stores. That one does mean it is empty. You know, because when you find rats, there is some maize.
Indeed.
And you know they need to buy, they need to buy like 3 million bags. So what is not telling the nation is simple. Where do we take our maize? And you know, when we ask the CS of trade, he told us, sell it to the millers. The millers are sharks in the market that want to profit, to make profiteering. So in my conclusion on that part is that the maize is ready, that were harvested early, but then CPB is not open.
So there's
the strategic grain reserve, so that I don't lose that thought. You remember during CS Munya's tenure, you remember they ensured that they destroyed National Grain Strategic Reserve. You remember they said they wanted to change the name? 11 billion allegedly that was within the National Strategic Reserve that was used to buy maize and other grains, including beans, including rice and many other, for emergency purposes, was restructured. And that is why the stores are empty.
And when they say restructured, what was that supposed to be? What did that mean?
It is a way of stealing.
Because 11 billion is a heck of a lot of money, isn't it?
And that is why I also the National Assembly previous Agriculture Committee was assist of that matter. I don't know what happened up to today. And that is why I'm trying to get the Agriculture National Assembly members to tell us what was the fate of their investigation into that issue.
Senator, I have to come back to that issue because, you know, building up to that is that there's certain elements now that we're building up into this conversation, isn't it?
Yes.
So we've said there's obviously a shortage in the country at the moment, which is why on some we see the highest prices of maize flour than we've seen ever in the country.
Yes,
right?
agreed.
There's that part. There is the part where we know that there is currently a drought. So there's a problem.
Yes.
The rains that have come we cannot count that towards anything at this point. Thirdly, we are saying that there is harvest that is going on, but that this maize needs to be processed and say give it until February, and then now we'll be able to to, deliver. That's all right. Now you've introduced something else, which we knew the barns are empty, the board is closed, the reserves are not operating because there was nothing to put. So the question is, even if there were maize now, Senator,
Yes.
why would the reserves shut their doors and not receive any of the maize that's available?
Now, that is a good question for the Minister of Agriculture and Trade, because, my sister, as you have said, the mistake is not on us. I can tell you today, if you open cereals and produce board in Eldoret, there will be lines of thousands and thousands of farmers who want to deliver the product. The reason I'm saying is that because in Kitale, the Trans Nzoia region, they have already harvested. In Wazingishu and Nandi, because of the different seasoning and raining, we are now harvesting. So it is ready, but where do we deliver? That is the big question. And I agree with you, because the cost of living and also the cost of unga is still very high. But that achievement will be progressive, because the government has subsidized, and we did thank the government as farmers that it has now subsidized to 3,500. But we are looking to further where we can buy 2,500 per 50 kilo of mbolea. We can only feel that effect in the next planting season, because the cost of fuel is still high, the cost of plowing is still high, and the cost of weeds. And now we have another fight, which we will have a discussion in future, is even the herbicides and acaricides, the herbicides that we use, or not acaricides, is, as in some countries like America, it has been banned because it has elements that might cause cancer. So the point I'm trying to make is simple. The maize is ready. Where to deliver is a problem, because if today National Cereals Produce say on Monday we are opening to buy, they normally buy 3 million bags through the strategic grain reserve, we'll be able to deliver. So it is not our mistake at farmer. And number two, I agree the cost is still high, but the problem is who made a mistake of not ensuring that our grain reserve do not have necessary grains like maize, like beans, like rice, like ndengu that we have. This country, we must plan for it. If we have to ensure there is food security. Like, for example, in Kitui, when there is ndengu, it is always there until they are being thrown away. There is a season where we have milk. It reaches a point where we drain we tunamwaga milk on the streets, because there is nowhere we are taking it. So the issue is we must plan ahead, and the people to assist us to plan ahead is our government and the necessary minister. And that is why we thought if the new minister, Senator Mitika Lenturu, would come, we need to stick at stakeholders and say, in future, what do we do when we have excess of food, so that we protect Kenyans that may face hunger in future?
And these are the questions, Senator, because as I listen to you, I get the sense, the point that you're raising.
Yes.
The point that you're raising is that farmers are harvesting now. There are farmers who've harvested.
Yes.
There are farmers who have maize in their stores and
Correct.
they'd like to sell. And bearing in mind the high cost of production, there's a certain minimum that a farmer cannot go below.
Yes.
And we'd like to sell at beyond this point. Now, the Kenya Kwanza government, like you've said, came into office on a campaign of looking and taking care of the interests of the farmer. Agriculture is one of the key pillars of the Kenya Kwanza manifesto.
Correct.
And the president's first pronouncement was, let's support the farmer. Fertilizer,
Correct.
lower it, so that future harvests shall be cheaper. Now, I'm struggling to understand how this same government that is so focused on the farmer and has a minister in office for agriculture is actually quiet on the matter of food and food security as we talk. That the Minister for Trade is the one who's talking about it, because trade about importation, that is where his line begins and
correct.
ends.
Yes.
But where is the Minister for Agriculture? Where are the questions being asked to this Minister for Agriculture? Because the question that you're asking, you asked the same questions in the last Parliament.
Yes.
You and others in the Senate, including the current Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula,
Yeah, we formed
were
a committee
asking
then
these
even.
questions
Yes.
about our strategic grain reserve, about Ukur Yatani's move and Peter Munya's move to disband the strategic food reserves, about all these moves that were taken. So I'd have expected that with that kind of leadership, where now the former senator is a speaker in the National Assembly, where a former backbencher senator is now among those who are the old people in the Senate in the current government, These are the questions you've been asking the right people, not making press statements.
I agree. One thing you need to appreciate, I agree. The Kenya as a country is agro economy. As a country, our economy and backbone is farming. Personally, it's because of maize that I went to school up to the level I am. Senator Mithika Linturi is a good man. He was my vice chair when I was the chair of JLAC before I was the whip over those fights in our beloved government of Jubilee. I did call him personally when this issue came up on Sunday. Unfortunately, he was on his way to South Korea accompanying the president, looking for better opportunities. He assured me that he would be on top of this issue when he comes back. And I hope when he chats back either tonight or tomorrow morning, we shall have a conversation, our meeting. But one thing we are still keen and happy is that no gazette notice has been issued allowing importation. And that is a good thing. And we hope it stays that way until we have a mutual agreement. Number two, the reason you're asking why did we go to the presser? The people needed to know what we are doing because we can't keep them in the dark. Even now, they are listening to SpiceFM and following through your other channels. And therefore, it is as a parliament, we must always keep updating. You know, under Article 34 and 35, the right to information, media freedom, people should know what is happening. And essentially, we were not censuring anybody. What we are just doing is simple, is informing the public that we are aware of the matter.
Is raising the matter.
We are raising the matter. Yesterday, even I raised a statement on the floor of the House to now summon the CS of Trade. You know, the reason CS Moses Kuria comes on board is because there is a parastatal called Kenya National Trading Corporation that is used for importation, and that is where he falls in. But what shocks us is that what informed him to allow importation, yet the Minister of Agriculture is silent. I thought the Minister of Agriculture should be the one initiating and saying, we are projecting a fraction of this, we are projecting that farmers will harvest this amount. Then now they make a request to the Minister of Trade. And therefore, I think as government, I know because everybody is new, they are new, we can forgive them because they are still on induction orientation.
Let me ask the question a different way.
Yes.
So the CS for agriculture has been silent on the matter.
Correct.
All right?
Yes.
He is the person who is in charge of the National Cereals and Produce Board, which you say has its doors closed. Farmers cannot sell their maize there.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
The CS reports to the president. The president at the coast last week amplified what the CS for Trade had announced earlier. We are going to import duty-free maize in the country, which means that the decision to import duty-free maize has been made at the highest level of government. And that's why I'm asking the question. Have you asked what the fate of your farmers is presently to the president and to the CS for agriculture?
One thing, Eric, if my memory serves me right, the cabinet that were outgoing cabinet, although there is a matter in court, is that they lifted the importation of GMO products in the country. As far as we are aware, as members of parliament, and we have consulting with the highest office and senior officers in government, is there were no day in cabinet that they sat and said, we shall import duty-free maize into the country, be it GMO or not. And therefore, the issue of GMO is a different animal altogether. What we are singly focused is on the importation of duty-free maize. And the president has been consistent that they needed to protect the farmer. And that is why I'm saying the conversation we are having here is we have already engaged the president and the Minister of Agriculture. And that is why I told you we did call the minister personally, CS Linturi, and he said he is in consultation with these senior ministry officials on how they can handle this matter. And I think so far they are doing very well because Gazette notice has not been issued. Because if the Gazette notice has been issued, it would mean our engagement would not bear any fruits because they would have a legal backing. And therefore, I think the Minister of Trade was misled by millers because millers are sharks who would want to maximize on the profits. Millers don't care if even if there is 1 kilo of, I think it's average of 90 shillings per kilo of unga at the moment. But if millers will tell it at 1,500, 500 shillings, they don't care. So long as the input is cheaper They don't care about the money. Because I ask a simple question. Even if you give a 2,000 shillings per bag, does it necessarily translate that he will sell it cheaper? Will you come and regulate him? So at the end of the day, those are challenges that we must look beyond what we are seeing. But I want to confirm to you that the engagement we have been having with the government and the president is aware of all these factors. He is trying to balance between the Kenyans who are facing hunger and famine across the country and the farmer.
Is that why we, against the backdrop of what we're saying, we have been reading in the news that a ship has docked with the maize? Now, again, we are not discussing GMO. We're just saying there is maize. So are we then saying that this is maize that is purposed to forestall the hunger and the problems that some of our fellow citizens are actually having? And the question we're asking is, if indeed that maize has come in, is it a donation? Is it free? Are we paying for it? And if we are paying for it, then why are we not able to buy the maize that, as you say correctly, some of our farmers already have? I haven't finished the questions. I'm just taking a deep breath.
Okay.
Now, if indeed we have farmers who have maize that is ready, do we know the quantities of maize that are actually ready for buying? And does the National Cereals and Produce Board have the money to buy? Does the government have money? Have they put money aside to be able to buy what is local? Now, can these questions be answered, or are they questions that will remain questions?
Answer those questions.
I think.
Let's take a break, Senator.
Okay.
So that now you can arrange those answers nicely and then answer them. It's 28 minutes to 9. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Senator Samson Cherargei, the senator for Nandi County, is our guest this morning. We are talking about balancing the interest of the farmer and balancing the interest of those consumers who need cheaper maize.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Senator, the questions that CD had asked. Number one, how many bags are in farmers' granaries today, ready for market? Number two, does the National Cereals and Produce Board have money to purchase this maize from the farmers? Those two, right? In that order.
Thank you. I think an average so far that I've invested and projection is 20 million bags are ready. We are looking at another 20 million or 22 thereabout in the next 2-3 weeks. In Trans Nzoia largely has harvested their maize, which is the bread basket. Those are projections. And two, I agree, but supplementary budget is coming up.
Yep.
I did ask the chair of finance and budget, Nandi Nyoro, on how they can factor in supplementary budget to give funds to NCPB. But now, since the hunger and famine, and there are Kenyans suffering from hunger, not only in traditional hunger-stricken areas like Northeastern, even here in Nairobi, we have hunger. In Mukuru, Kwanjenga, these slums where people are facing hunger. So the issue, in fact, we are using a lot of money to beg, to buy food in emergency than even allocating to National Cereals and Produce Board. And in that caucus, by the way, I have members of National Assembly. You saw a number of them that accompanied me in my presser. So even when, we had a meeting before issuing a presser. So we agreed that on the National Assembly floor and because a number of them are in budget committee, to persuade members of National Assembly as they process supplementary budget, at least to put some money to allow NCPB to buy, not for NCPB only, but NCPB to buy as an agent of national strategic grain reserves, so that we can have, and it's not, by the way, people should not have this misinformation, misnomer that this national grain strategic reserve does not only buy maize. It buys rice, grains, every grain that you know. So, in fact, I expect all members of parliament should support this initiative, because even if you come from Kitui, there is Ndengu, you come from maybe Coast Korosho, you come from Mount Kenya region, the people plant beans, there is viazi here in Nyandarua, there is rice in Mwea. So, in fact, this is a collective assignment that as members of parliament, we should push the inclusion of money into the supplementary budget. We need to appreciate that this is a transition moment. And therefore, the previous government might have not find it wise to put money in NCPB. But since we went to economic forums in counties, we engaged farmers, and we allowed them and told them guarantee minimum returns, we must live up to that word by reviving sectors that are important. And you know, we had coffee caucus here in Manzoni trying to discuss on how to revive coffee sector.
Yep.
Now we're having a fight in the tea sector where there are some individuals who have taken us to court because of the Tea Act that we passed as parliament, which means it wanted to give more power to the ordinary mwananchi here in Kiambu, the ordinary farmer, as opposed as to somebody who is sleeping in Mombasa on the sand, the middlemen who are benefiting through child trading limited outside the country. So those are some of the things that we must have and I hope, and we did have a discussion both in parliamentary group meeting with the president and even at economic forums, that his administration will look more into allocation of more funds to the farming sector or agricultural sector to ensure we revive. You know, when I grew up, Eric, and my sister here and Siti Muga, you know the problem, I don't want to pronounce her name. She will teach me in camera after this how to pronounce it. Is that when I was growing up, my brother, when you are a maize farmer, you could sell your maize, work at Marshall's in Eldoret, and buy a brand Pujo 5 or 4. Zero mileage. Because being a farmer
was big.
It was big. It was like a top-notch corporate executive in a city. So we need to return that pride to where we had. And that is why farming now is one way of, I don't want to go into the words of Moses Kuria, but it's a one way of frustrating. Because everything is expensive, from fuel, from herbicides or the you use, everything that you use in farming, the seeds, everything is very expensive.
I am your neighbor.
Yes.
I live in Muhoroni.
Yes.
Yes.
In fact, you must be voting in Nandi.
When I was a youth, we had the same experience with sugarcane farmers. And I'm talking about the smallholder, not the big holder.
Yes.
They could take their children to study abroad with the proceeds from their cane.
And you remember Chemelil there was more a city than Kisumu.
Yes, it was.
Because of the sugarcane business.
Precisely.
And you remember there were good schools around there, Chemelil Academy, that were doing very well.
They were.
So
but we take it even further to Mumias.
Yes.
And look at how the name Mumias, it was a small, dusty little shopping center that you could pass without knowing.
Correct.
How the factory made it to be the conversation. And again, the very things you're saying, social amenities like schools and what have you, came up. And those industries died.
As I hear then, Mheshimiwa, what you're saying is the next steps.
Yes.
Next step number one is the farmers are holding about 20 million bags of maize. And by December, we'll have an extra 22 million bags of maize or so.
Yes.
So 45 million bags of maize available
in the
locally. Yes.
By December.
Yes.
By the time we are saying hustler fund,
yes.
So first step is,
and in fact maanselas wanaweza chukua hiyo pesa wafanye biashara
ya mahindi.
So first step is the National Assembly to approve the supplementary budget to allow for the purchase of grain.
Correct.
Which includes maize.
Yes.
There's also the other fund that is being coordinated through the Office of the Deputy President, which is on emergency relief and coordination.
Correct.
Is that also part of the target?
Yes.
That the money that's coming for disaster relief and coordination, for famine relief and coordination, also is channeled through the National Cereals and Produce Board for the Strategic Gain Reserve.
In fact, outside that, because the law is, the PMF Act is very clear when you're using emergency and disaster fund. But that's a conversation we can have. And we have had that. We did brainstorming where we want to have a discussion with the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, because he's the one leading that agenda, to see if we can take that sum of the money to buy, so that national, in fact, that is, we thought, in fact, when we were having a conversation, we told the members of National Assembly in budget to push for money to be given to NCPB. We gave an alternative 2, or option B, is that we can use the money that has been raised through emergency fund, give it to NCPB to buy on behalf and deliver, because it is shorter to deliver maize from Wazingishu to Mandera than getting it from Zambia to Kenya or Mexico or wherever you want to get it from. Mozambique. And therefore, it becomes much more easier. So I'm telling you, my brother, that this maize is ready.
Okay.
The mechanisms of getting it to the market and access to millers and consumer is where the challenge is. And you know, as farmers, our hands are tied. We can't You know, by the way, if today we were told deliver to SpiceFM maize, you can get thousands and millions of bags to SpiceFM.
Is there an irreducible minimum price that your farmers are saying below this price we are not going to sell, either to NCPB, to whichever miller, or even to Eric in the studio?
In fact, our proposal was we match the fertilizer price.
7,000.
7,000 for 7,000. So that we recoup the expenses. And you know, we are just using fertilizer. We have not had diesel. We have not.
For a 90 kilogram bag of
yes.
maize.
Because let me tell you, in a year, according to research, one person, unless there is somebody who can consume more than 2 bags in this room, one person consumes 1 bag of maize per year. An average Kenyan from
per year.
Yes, per year. One bag.
90 kilos of ugali.
90 kgs.
One person.
One person.
So it's ugali.
The one that is yes, ugali.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yes, so from my neighbors in Western, maybe they can do 2 or more. They can do or more. But Nairobians, because of the nutrition and don't eat a lot of ugali, can do an average of 1. But now, what we are saying is that so when you look at through those eyes, it is important that
but 7,000 is too high, Mheshimiwa.
No, it is practical.
What's the highest that the NCPB has ever bought?
The highest that NCPB has ever bought is 3,000 before 2,500. And you know, NCPB will assist us to checkmate the millers. Because if, for example, NCPB, you know the prices we are selling huko kwa mashinani huko kwenu.
Farm gate.
So unajua mimi ndio napea nyinyi mahindi. Yes, hapo. Is 5,400 at the moment. Ile huko market ya Kisumu, because Kisumu is my good market, and Nairobi here, we are selling at 5,400. So, and that one we still feel that
and
it is not sufficient enough.
Almost double when you're buying from you're selling to the government.
We want it because government needs to protect us. When they are buying, they are not buying out of sympathy. They are buying to protect us.
Eric, you know why that amount makes sense, even much as it sounds exorbitant.
Yes.
The reason why the price of maize, the product that we're talking about, is high is because the government has failed to protect the farmer in the first place. If the government had enacted policies where fertilizer is reasonable, everything that has to do with the input is reasonable, why would the prices be high?
Correct.
Everything that goes into that production is high.
But the cost of producing that 1 bag of maize is not 7,000. Mheshimiwa here is saying it's 4,000. It's an
average of 4,000.
Yesterday we were told by David Kosing it's about 2,300. So 7,000 shillings to buy that bag of maize. You know, it is not NCPB, it's not Serikali of Nairobi. It is taxpayer.
Eric,
but
it isn't the amount that I'm fixed my mind on.
Correct.
No. My mind is fixed on ensuring that the farmer gets adequate recompense for his produce.
Correct.
That is really, that is my argument.
What's adequate if they've produced it at 3,200?
How do we know that is the cost? Because
they've told us.
The average. Yes.
Just go ahead. You're saying
the average is 4,000, not 3,200.
Yesterday,
because I'm a farmer.
David Kosing told us 2,400.
Kosing does not grow maize majorly in West Pokot. It's majorly in Trans Nzoia, and you know the reason West Pokot might be cheaper, Eric. They might be right because some areas is still fertile.
Okay.
So they don't need to use a lot of mbolea.
So his constituency
because as we have farmed over the years, the quality of soil has gone down, and therefore we need to use a lot of mbolea.
Okay, that's understandable because we also understand that on the eastern side of the country, Kwale and Tabeta is 2,300. Because
the soil is still strong, just like when you plant in Uganda. Some of my friends have farms in Uganda, and you just did not even need mbolea. So it becomes cheaper. So it depends on how the soil is and what you need to do. Top dressing, you know, you need to put mbolea when you are planting, do top dressing, do weeding, and all those. When you do an average, is 4,000 shillings. But you are saying give us 7,000 to recompense us and tell us we have done a good job, because it is not out of sympathy.
So now,
it is out of commitment.
Mheshimiwa.
Yes.
Hiyo ni bei ya kuongea, si ndio?
Yes, hiyo ni bei. No, it's reasonable. Irreducible.
Irreducible is what they're
So
saying.
that CT we can go back, we can be re-energized to go back to farming. Tunaweza vaa gumboot sasa na t-shirt
Ni ya
na
kurudishia
khaki,
farmer shukrani.
na ya kurudishia shukrani. And then now CT, as you know, so that you come in, is that Eric and my sister is that money. By the way, schools have closed. That money farmers will need for their school fees, for their upkeep, for everything, and then get back the remaining money to go back to farming.
I'm fixated on the 7,000 though, Mheshimiwa. I can hear what you're saying, but
I want you to look at it from
you are currently
committee.
selling in the market at 5,200. But when it comes to selling to the taxpayer,
Yes.
you want to sell it at 7,000, Bob. I see the hand of unscrupulous middlemen here who will go and buy that maize from the farmer at farm gate at 5,200
Yes.
or even less,
Yes.
and sell it to the government at 7,000 because tumeamua and 7,000. Who takes the maize to?
But Eric, there is some, although we failed during last season, there was a way there NCPB you needed to produce a copy of title deed, the number of acres that you are farming to be allowed to sell to NCPB. We can introduce such mechanisms where you have even a letter of the chief, although that issue was a bit hazy. It was not coming out very well. But where that is a good process where
Purchase
there was a
price
letter
for
of
maize
the,
has cost a cabinet secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture his job.
of course.
And we know this.
Of course, even the history, the issue of maize has started during Paul Ngei and those days in the
Yes.
60s. So what I'm trying to propose in such situation where middlemen are there is that what we can do is introduce some measures or stringent measures so that we don't give undue advantage to unscrupulous middlemen who want to exploit. And I agree with you. Like, for example, we had said, if I am I am planting maize in your land in Moroni, I should be able to produce to NCPB a copy of lease agreement that we wrote so that I pay to your farm to lease, then farm, then get the maize. Then NCPB will now prove that I have a copy of lease that shows that I planted maize somewhere in Arok or in Moroni or in
Mheshimiwa,
anywhere.
Kenyans with documentation.
They will give you
Alright.
documentation and ask you if you need more, and they'll produce more.
But the village people are still honest.
You
in
know,
Nairobi.
Mheshimiwa, this story of middlemen, I think it must be reconstructed and deconstructed. Why I'm saying this is because we talk of middlemen, we talk of briefcase millers, we talk of briefcase farmers. These things, everything we talk about in this regard would not happen if people did not aid and abet it. It is assisted.
Yeah, correct.
At NCBA, there are people who facilitate this. At the level of
An NCBA.
NCPP.
sorry,
NCPB.
Did I say NCBA?
I was worried.
I apologize. I apologize, NCBA. I apologize, NCPB. Yes. The truth is, if there is no will to actually ensure that the farmer is protected,
Correct.
and there is a greater interest in working with the millers, even at the level of the government, we can continue talking here, and we will talk, and there'll be a little tokenism. But when you next come here, we'll be talking about the same thing, because it will have happened again.
Yes.
Somewhere along the line, from what I have seen in successive governments, not just this one, the farmers' interests are taken care of verbally. Tokenism. Then God knows what happens behind the tent, and suddenly what you thought was a hot issue stops being hot, okay? And the farmer is bearing the brunt of all these things. Now, you are the lawmakers. It is you who can come up with processes and structures that ensure that not only the farmer's interests taken care of, that whatever benefit is supposed to accrue, whether it is to the miller, whether it is to the citizenry, by getting a fair price, is actually achieved. But so long as the people we talk of, we refer to them as cartels or middlemen, so long as they have a foothold and they have a good stay within our system, the truth of the matter is this discussion will not end.
Agreed. And that is what Eric just said, that in the last Senate, where I served as a member of ADO committee, by the way, there were very good proposals that we gave in that report. But unfortunately, it's gathering dust in parliament with government offices, because one of the proposals, Eric, was that we did propose restructuring of NCPB. A radical proposal that we gave. that there are many measures that we put in place in restructuring of NCPB, restructuring also of National Strategic Grain Reserve. You remember we passed the Warehousing Receipting System Act, it is in place. So all these things that we did put in place, and I can tell you as Parliament, we have done our best. I'll send WhatsApp the recommendation or the report that was tabled, being co-chaired by the current Speaker, Speaker Moses Wetangula, was co-chaired by Senator Professor Margaret Kamar, the nominated Senator and immediate former Senator of Uasin Gishu. We gave radical proposals on how we can not only change the aspect of maize, but also the farming in the country. And our focus, singular focus, was on the farmer. And that it is behind that foresight that we passed the Tea Act. But because the cartels within the Tea Act decided that this law is not good for us, they went to court. Just the way what is happening in coffee. You remember we had coffee cherry fund. We fought over it in the Senate, where even, coffee should be allocated across the country. I think Kisumu, they have coffee. Nandi has coffee. In Western Kenya, even Bungoma.
They do, but not in large quantities.
But we were being left out. How do we encourage the issue of coffee if we do not ensure, even if you are planting even 1 acre,
potential.
Potential. Because coffee can grow anywhere in the country so long as there is that potential.
So that zoning that previously ensured that what we are saying was repealed.
Correct.
And we brought in a new act.
Correct. But the coffee bill, if my memory serves me right, it ended at some stage. We are yet to pass into law. We had passed at the Senate. I think it was read by, it was by Chair, the former Senator of Embu, Senator Njeru Ndwiga, was the one sponsoring on behalf of the committee. So that is when we wanted to put coffee cherry fund, because the coffee cherry fund, as you have said, was being used as tokenism, where a minister would go to Meru and say, now we have 10 billion from World Bank, I'll give 2 billion to this county. You left out Bungoma. You left out Nandi. You left out Kisumu. So we are now trying to, when we are looking at the laws, even there is Kenya Sugar Bill, which is in the Senate also, is lying in the Senate. We are trying to look at it, how to reinvent and re-energize the sugar sector. So I agree with you when you ask the question, what are you parliamentarians doing to aid and assist the farmer? We have done our part. It is only on the implementation stage.
Now, the implementation, the president, Senator Cherargei, is your friend.
Yes, he is. Yes.
This government, when they talk about serikali ni yetu, you are in the front line of saying serikali ni yetu.
Absolutely.
Your former colleague in the Senate is a minister for agriculture.
Yes.
Your former colleague in the Senate is the third highest ranking officer in government.
Correct.
Now, we should not be having this discussion. That's all I'm saying.
But I'm saying also we should
be
also
hearing from a government that says we have reports in place. The Senate, the Speaker of the National Assembly is aware of that report. He authored it. We have this and the other in place. The President has participated in conversations with farmers and signed charters. We should be hearing what is going to happen to make sure that these things move.
But Eric, at the moment is that we also not need to judge early. Because just the beginning. We have economic, I think under Article 43, Economic Council. In fact, it should be called Economic and Social Council. In the build-up of Article 43 of the Constitution, the likes of David D. Cheruiyot and the rest sit in that council. And that is when now they are trying to synthesize the economic forums that we had across the country so that we can know, and that is why we are waiting for the David D team to give us proposal where we can transform it to policy, to legislations, to rules and regulations. Then now we can, the government can be judged on that basis. And the president has good intention, as he's my friend. He has good intentions towards reviving the agriculture sector, because he knows this economy is agro-economy. Largely everywhere you go, when you go to a village, you must get somebody. Even anywhere you come from, you must get kangombe, kako na kangombe mahali, na ndama, kuku moja for sustenance, but also for commercial. Because hata ula ako na kuku anauza mayai mbili. By the way, mayai moja is very expensive. I think it's 50 shillings per one. In the village, it used to be 6 shillings not long ago. But we are told the Ugandans are cheap. So at the end of the day, farming farming is a lifeline of every Kenyan, even you here. I know after this show you'll say hiyo ng'ombe ni ngonjwa ama mmekamua iko kitu. Have you delivered to that milkman? My brother here city, I know there is a privatization that is coming up on nuclears of Chemelil and privatizing the nuclear sector. You would be saying hiyo mkutano ya wazee mliamua mambo gani, and you know we are in court on that matter. Senator. So at the end of the day we must look, but my point is important.
Parting shot.
My parting shot. Sorry for overshooting. My passing shot is, let us buy all maize from farmers, mop up. After we are mop up, from February, March, the government can import. On the issue of GMO, we expect that matter the cabinet has approved. Let it come to parliament under Article 118, public participation. We invite all stakeholders, all religious people, all Kenyans to give their views for the safety. And in any case, if the importation happens, the rules and regulations should apply for the safety of Kenyans. And we must be careful because Europe and other countries import most of their farm produce from Kenya because we are banned GMO.
Yeah.
But those are conversations that we can continue to have with government to ensure that we give Kenyans what the best for Kenyans. But at the end of the day, as I conclude, let us protect the Kenyan farmer. Yeah.
Senator Samson Cherargei, Nandi County Senator, thank you very much for joining us.